Hey, everybody. Welcome to a quick hits episode of Crossing the Line. I'm Mike Davella, joined by the usual cast of characters, Tyler Zulli, Jack Molesky, Mark Fagnani, and some capacity on your screens. And I know I'm not Tyler. This is my first hosting job of the season, and I'm just going to be a moderator. I'm playing both sides. That way I always come out on top. Mark's going to be making funny faces throughout.
Smart.
And we're going to be talking a little bit more, instead of a segment, into a debate style. And we have two very, very polarizing opinions from our two, Jack Molesky, Tyler Zulli, wherever they are on the screen. And it started out as a text conversation. Earlier today, we were discussing
OJ did
segments. It. That's true. If the gloves
on the other side, you hate to see it, but it happens.
Anyway, we were talking about the divisional predictions, World Series predictions, and Jack decided to start some shit today. I don't know if he woke up on the wrong side of the bed, but he decided to say to Zulli, McDavid over Ohtani in the World Series. And Tyler responded with, McDavid stinks at hockey. There, I said it. Give me Scott Lawton any day. Kind of blasphemous, but we proceed. And then
seen him play lately.
And Jack.
Hey, listen, he's on like a 9-point streak against the Detroit Red Wings specifically.
Elite. Anyway, Jack responded with, I'm going to be cool, calm, and collected, and I methodically pick your ass apart. And then he changed that to as I, because didn't know how to speak English at first, but he figured it out as he went.
Can't spell. Sorry.
So we opened up the debate, and we hope that this sparks debate across every 7 of our followers. Who's the better player, Shohei Ohtani or Connor McDavid? And I'll let you guys elaborate if you want to have more specific guidelines to this debate, whether it be the more prolific player, the more important player, the most valuable player, however you want to draw it up. I would love to hear your opening statements, and then we will proceed from there.
Well, I think that there's guidelines, Jack, to this, because if you use certain words, like Mike used prolific, right? If you're going to talk about prolific, then you're right. It's Connor McDavid, right? So like the opening statement that I'm going to make to you is that Connor McDavid is the best player in hockey, and it's not remotely close. Connor McDavid also may be the most talented player I've ever seen play the game of hockey, and that may also not be remotely close. He may, in fact, be the most talented player to ever grace the ice, period. And that's saying something, that becomes blasphemous when you talk about Wayne Gretzky, right? And Mario Lemieux and these super talented guys, right? But if you are talking about prolific, then yes, I would agree with you. The way that Shohei Ohtani has transcended baseball in such a positive light, doing multiple things and doing multiple things successfully, being a MVP caliber DH, and a Cy Young caliber starting pitcher over the course now of what has become longevity is nothing short of I don't even want to use the word remarkable. It's not even the words stunning. I don't have words to describe it because I don't think the word exists. When you create a player in MLB The Show, or you create a player in, I don't know, backyard baseball, this is what you want him to be. You want him to be Shohei Ohtani.
I think the word you're looking for is usually described to describe basketball players, and I would say unicorn is the perfect description.
Yeah, then if you're going unicorn, then Shohei Ohtani is the unicorn of all unicorns. He is the king unicorn. He is God tier unicorn. He's Charlie the unicorn.
No words. This is awesome. Like, I have no words to describe it. That's a really cheap way to try to win a debate when you don't actually have a great reason to pick this guy. Look, I think the discussion was who is the most dominant athlete in sports right now. I think that's what I believe those were the words, or that was who is the best athlete in sports, most dominant, whatever.
Yes,
it's Connor McDavid.
I believe it was best player in team sports.
Team sports, right? And
it's most dominant player in team sports.
Best player, most dominant, whatever. It's Connor McDavid, and it's not quite close. It's definitely on the ice. Ohtani's great, but there is no one single player that is that much better at his sport than Connor McDavid.
I agree.
He is the best player at his sport. It's not even close. And with that being said, if he's that much better than everyone else at his sport, he's the best athlete in a team sport. Like, if you're comparing, you can only compare him to the sport he's playing. And if the gap is that big in the NHL, then Ohtani's not the best player in baseball or the best athlete in his sport because of the fact that he's not that much better than his peers. Like, yeah, he's the only guy that can do these two things really, really well, but I can find a hitter that can hit better than Shohei Ohtani, and I can find a pitcher that can pitch better than Shohei Ohtani.
Great.
I can't find anyone that does what Connor McDavid does night in, night out to just dominate the game.
And I'm going to use a argument. I'm actually going to defame one of the big arguments because I think it's stupid. One of the big arguments that people use, I'm going to use it to an extent, but I'm not going to cross the line. See what I did there?
That's what we do here.
The Shohei Ohtani argument to compare to Connor McDavid, people go, well, what would happen if Connor McDavid, the night after scoring 3 goals, got in the net, made 25 saves?
I ask that question.
That's a stupid argument to have.
Doesn't make sense.
The reason it's a stupid argument to have is because it's not a feasible, or at least we've not seen it to a point where it's a feasible conversation. The better conversation I think you could have is, what if Connor McDavid, after a night after scoring 3 goals, played 22 minutes of ice time as a top line defenseman? I think that's a fairer conversation to have, is it not?
Sure, it's a fair conversation, but I don't really think like Connor McDavid, as what he does currently, night in and night out, is the most feared player on the ice.
Agree.
Shohei Ohtani, like, he can go 0 for 3. He doesn't dominate every single game. Connor McDavid has gone 4 games out of 73 this year without a point. 4 games out of 73. He has 21 games with 3 or more points. It's insane what he's doing in an era where scoring is down for the most part. So I agree with you. Like, yeah, he couldn't go out and play 22 minutes of defense. He doesn't have to. He's that damn good on offense.
Well, correct. And so the point that I'm trying to make is Connor McDavid, while being the elite scorer that we know him to be, is he a Selke Trophy candidate?
No, he's not a Selke Trophy candidate.
He's not. That's my point. And if he were, there would be no debate that he's the greatest player to ever touch the ice. Like, it would be locked already that he's the most talented ever. With him not being that, when I watch Shohei Ohtani, you are correct that there are better pitchers, better starting pitchers than Shohei Ohtani, and there are better offensive players, better hitters than Shohei Ohtani. There's no question in my mind. But when you combine the two together, when you are making comparisons to players all time, and it says these stats become, Shohei Ohtani becomes the second player ever in Major League Baseball to do X, Y, and Z as a pitcher and a hitter. And the last guy to do it is Babe Ruth, who I think, quite frankly, at this point is more of like Paul Bunyan than he is an actual baseball player, because we've gotten so far from the Babe Ruth era that
the SWAT.
I'm not sure. I really don't know what Babe Ruth actually was compared to like today's players. I know what Shohei Ohtani is compared to today's players, which is he the best at either of those two things? No. But when you combine elite with elite, that is something that has never been seen before, at least in the modern era of any sport. And I'm not sure that I'm not so sure you see it again anytime soon.
So yeah, I get that, but it's so I don't want to confuse, like, again, it's not like he just does both. He does both at a very, very high level, but the novelty of doing both doesn't override the fact, again, like,
is it a novelty at this point though? I mean, like, you've got yourself and Mark and everybody has had conversations about him maybe being a Cy Young candidate or him being an MVP candidate. It's not a novelty anymore. It's a realization.
But it's a novelty in the sense of this discussion because he isn't the best at either of those, and McDavid is just far and away the best player. Like, if you said pick a pitcher that you would want to win in Game 7, ask the players, I don't know if Shohei Ohtani gets the top vote. If you say pick a hitter that you want at the plate with the game on the line, Ohtani doesn't get the top vote.
Are we sure about that at this point?
Yeah, I'm 100% sure. I'm 100% sure about
on both factors.
On both factors, I'm 100% sure on that.
See, I'm not anymore. After what I've watched him do in the World Baseball Classic, to go into that game when needed to get the 3 outs needed, I could be convinced that with a Game 7 on the line, and Shohei, his manager, listen, the Angels are never making the World Series, but let's play
playoffs.
Let's play a hypothetical world where they do, where they get into a late inning game in a Game 7, and they've got to go to Shohei and say, listen, we need 3 outs, and I would be disgustingly confident with him getting me those 3 outs.
I would be confident, but again, I don't think he's not like a he's the only guy that anyone would pick. Like if you say Game 7, who's the guy that I want out on the ice to try to score me a goal in the last 2 minutes? Only correct answer, other than Scott Laughton against the Red Wings, if that is the last 2 minutes, the only correct answer is Connor McDavid. And I think that would be a consensus pick among anyone not living in Pittsburgh who says Sidney Crosby, because Sidney Crosby is the best player in the world.
Well, I've also heard people in Pittsburgh say, well, if Mario Lemieux didn't have cancer, then he probably would have been. It's like, okay,
a lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas. I think like Gretzky's the best hockey player of all time in terms of stats. No one even talked about Gretzky's defensive numbers. Gretzky wasn't a great defensive player, but it didn't matter because he was that damn good on the offensive side, which is my same argument for Connor McDavid. And actually, this year his defensive numbers have been way better than they ever have in his career. So he is growing. I guess the biggest thing for me is like I can build a show.
But you could use that argument to say that Shohei's numbers were the best they've ever been in 2022. Like offensively and pitching performance wise, they were his best. It was his best year yet.
Sure,
he won the MVP.
Yeah, they're both getting better. But again, like McDavid's numbers were just the best. Ohtani had some competition. I can build a Shohei Ohtani. I can't build a Connor McDavid. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
You can build two Shohei Ohtanis and smush them together like a sandwich. You can't build one Shohei and make it be the same guy.
See, that's
you can make them better.
You're losing me with that. Like that statement was the first thing, Jack, that I did not agree with. To say you could build Shohei Ohtani, like he's a unicorn.
What I will say, Jack, is we have built him. It's called Create a Player on MLB The Show. I create it every single year.
The thing is, so when you're building a team to want to succeed, like you start with Connor McDavid, you start with Shohei Ohtani, but one player, as the Angels have proven, doesn't win you anything. So like with what Shohei's going to get paid in the
how
future,
many playoff series have the Edmonton Oilers won?
The Edmonton Oilers made it to a conference final a couple years ago.
They won 2 playoff series. I'm not sure they've won another playoff series. Am I mistaken? I don't think they've won another playoff series outside of that run.
They've won one with Connor McDavid, another playoff series, I think a couple years before. It hasn't been much, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like Shohei's a unicorn. Fantastic, sure. But with what he's going to get paid, he's amazing, but I just don't necessarily know if that's the one guy when how much he's going to get paid. It's awesome what he can do. It's just not that dominant relative to the two aspects. Take one of those out of the equation and he's a very good player. And it's awesome he can do both, but he's just not McDavid level because
chop my left arm off and I'd have to learn how to be right-handed. Is what you're that's like I know that sounds ridiculous, but like that you take an aspect of any player's game away. They don't have to be an elite player. You take an aspect of any player's game away and they're going to suffer.
Well, yeah, but we're not taking anything away. I'm just saying, like, again, he's just not the best at either of those things. I feel like that's what you have to be the most dominant player in your sport. Like, you have to be clear-cut the best at one thing, and he's not.
So I am in agreement with you that if you were to say, start me a franchise in the NHL, there's no question you're taking Connor McDavid with pick 1, right? Like, I think we can all agree upon that. I think the world agrees upon that, except, like you said, those weirdos in Pittsburgh. If you started an MLB franchise today, I don't think that there's a player that I would take over Shohei Ohtani at pick 1. And I agree with your statement that he's not the elite, the best of the best at either one of the things that he does. But it's the combination of the two that if I'm starting a franchise from scratch, I'm taking Shohei Ohtani with the first overall pick.
I agree with that. I think they are 1-1, but could you make a better team? With, I guess, if you're factoring money, which we shouldn't factor in money in this, but like you could make just as good of a team if you didn't have Shohei Ohtani by picking like other pretty solid players, pretty elite players at those positions and building it up like an all-star hitter and an all-star pitcher. You can make that team just as good, I think. You can't really make a team just as good with anyone other than Connor McDavid.
Well, so then my question would be is why, like, I know that this is going to sound redundant and silly, but why are the Edmonton Oilers, why have they not won a cup yet? And I know, I know the outside factors it's so hard to win a championship. I get it. But if you're going to use that argument, then it would be like the LeBron argument, right? Why did LeBron not win the title every year if he's far and away the best player in the league? and he won a lot of titles, right? And he lost a lot of titles. But if you're going to use that argument, then the simplistic retort would be, why have the Oilers not won a cup?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, and people put a lot of blame on McDavid, I think unfairly so. But yeah, you probably look at the best player in the world and think, damn, they should have won one by now. They arguably have a top 5 player outside of McDavid too, and Leon Draisaitl, sure, which is another argument for another time.
Well, you can make
the real answer is goaltending.
The Angels too with Mike Trout.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's crazy the parallels, I guess, because Trout was the best player in the world, I think, in baseball until Ohtani came along, and Draisaitl is probably more top 10. People give him a little too much credit. But that is kind of a separate discussion we can have in another time of how many superstars does it take to actually build the championship team, because those two teams are proving that it might take more than 2. Yeah, I think the other thing with my argument is I would be really interested to see if Connor McDavid didn't play in the NHL, the league that does the worst possible marketing of its league, where this discussion would be, because I think the biggest thing that's holding McDavid back is Gary Bettman, because he doesn't know how to market his league. Like, imagine if McDavid was in the NBA.
Oh God, baseball's awful at it too.
Baseball's very bad, but at least Ohtani has the global stage, the recognition in Japan. Like, Canadians don't talk about Connor McDavid the way the Japanese people talk as proudly as they do about Ohtani. So I think McDavid gets, I don't think the man gets any love for how good he is because of the sport of hockey.
I would flip that on its head though and say that there really isn't an athlete from Japan like Shohei Ohtani, versus you have so many fantastic hockey players from Canada. You can name all of them on one hand and everyone would talk about them. And I mean, I saw Nathan McKinnon on Trailer Park Boys. Like, there are plenty of guys that are very big name guys that they all love. So, I mean, of course, if I have an opportunity to shout out Trailer Park Boys, I'm gonna, but I'm serious. Like, I do believe that there are a lot more talented guys that, while they may not be at the level of Connor McDavid, they are superstar talents coming from that country. And it's like, how many, I mean, again, McDavid is doing some otherworldly things, but at the same time, it's not the same type of conversation that you're having. I think there is some sort of disconnect, and that's why you really can't kind of compare the two, because again, like Zuli said, unless you're able to have a multifaceted guy, if McDavid played defense at the same time, or if he was able to make impacts on different sides of the puck every night, it'd be a different story. But I think you're kind of debating apples to oranges at this point.
It's a different.
I think we were debating apples to oranges from the onset. I mean, it was a think piece thing more than anything.
It's a different sport. So I think baseball is truly really the only sport, maybe other than football, that you can actually, say they played on two sides of the ball, because hockey and basketball, you just stay on the same court and you play defense, but it doesn't look exactly the same.
Yeah, a two-way player in baseball is significantly different than a two-way player in hockey. Like, if you tell me a two-way player in hockey, that means you've got a forward who's a solid defender, or a defenseman who can come up and produce points. Like, they're two different topics of conversation.
Yeah, and I think with that, like, it's also a different sport, whereas McDavid can, again, I go back to just the offensive prowess. Like, Gretzky wasn't good at defending. Same with McDavid. He's so dominant at offense, he doesn't even have to be good at defense, because he's never playing defense. He's always possessing the puck. He's always playing in the offensive zone. So while he's not one-dimensional, but his defense maybe lacks a little bit, again, he's just so damn dominant on the offensive side that it truly doesn't matter. Again, I don't think we're debating like we have right answers. There is no right answer. You can go back and forth like we have all the time. But I think that McDavid, for me, if you want one player to just dominate one game, you pick him over anyone else in any sport.
I would
Mark,
say
I guess
Mahomes.
Mark, I guess you're our deciding factor. That's what you were here for, was to be the jury.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were some great points.
No, you don't lie.
No, I think that.
How much have you actually listened?
Turns out he wasn't listening.
He was
playing with his cat.
He was making facial expressions the whole time.
Gary.
Gary. Where is Gary? Yeah. What's up, Gary?
No, I think that it's just one of those, like, it's a good think piece, but you can't debate it. because it's just so different. I think Jack's right. If you have one game where you need somebody to just be absolutely dominant in, it probably is McDavid, honestly. But I think you're right on the other hand there, Zulz, because there's nobody that does what Ohtani does. There's nobody out there that is pitching at a top 10 elite level and hitting at a top 10 elite level. I mean, the dude went to the World Baseball Classic, had the hardest hit ball, the fastest pitch ball, and the fastest time to first base. But on the same side of that, I mean, if you can put somebody like McDavid up against a guy like Gretzky, who's widely known as the greatest athlete, or of his sport at least, I guess, the greatest player of his sport of all time, like, if there's even a conversation, he has to be incredible, right?
Yeah, and there's no, I mean, that's, again, Zuli prefaced this, that's a different discussion. But comparing errors is something that we won't get into because, again, apples to oranges, you can't do it. I just think that there's only one way to settle this, Zul, because neither of us will give in. So, yeah.
I'm wrestling.
Yeah. I'll get the pool with the Jello. I'll be right back.
More.
I think the other
index fingers.
One of us has to put out a public apology on social media saying the other person was right when either Shohei Ohtani or Connor McDavid win a championship. First one of them to win a championship, the other person wins. And we are both going to die before that apology goes out because neither of them are ever going to do it.
Be an angel anymore. That's all.
I was going to say the good news is Shohei's a free agent at the end of this year, so I got a good chance.
We'll see. Not if the Mets pay up for him.
It's true.
Ooh. So in conclusion, if you hate headbutting opinions and debates on First Take and shows like that, then you probably like us because apparently we agree with each other all the time tonight. So what a
such an anomaly for us too.
By the way, tweet at us. Let us know. Or comment in the Instagram.
We'll make a poll.
Which of us won?
And which is going to win a championship first?
That too.
Choose your player.
Mark, are you allergic to your cat?
No, I just got sneezed.
Maybe a little bit.
You should see the pollen out here. It's crazy.
All right.
I'm not crying. You're crying. Stop it.
And with that,
all right, Mike, take us home before we get off.
Please, for the love of God.
With that, this has been a hot take segment, a quick hitter, if you will, of Crossing the Line. For Jack Molesky, Tyler Zulli, Mark Fagnani, and Gary.
Gary.
I'm Mike Tavella. See you next week.